Welcome to Viviane Art. We are having a conversation today with Julie Beugin, who is in her home in Berlin, Germany. And I am in Viviane Art, our gallery space in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We have a beautiful exhibition of works up by Julie Beugin, daylight cutouts. And in just a second, I'm going to get my gallery director, Mika, to walk around and give us a tour. And while she's doing that, I'll just do a little bit of an introduction. There's Mika. I'm going to give her the laptop. Okay, so Mika's going to start giving us a bit of a tour with the brand new photo collages. This is the first time that we've had completed digital photo collage prints in an exhibition. We're going to talk a bit more about these in a minute. But first, Viviane Art is a contemporary art space in Calgary, Alberta, a commercial gallery. And this is our third exhibition with Julie, our third solo exhibition with Julie. This is Julie's hometown, Calgary, but she hasn't lived here for a long time. Julie graduated high school from Western Canadian High here in Calgary and went on to do her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at Emily Carr University in Vancouver. From there, Julie went to Montreal and did her Master's of Fine Arts at Concordia University. And shortly after that, in 2009, she moved with her partner Nam to Berlin, Germany, and she's still there. So Julie has a depth of both educational background and painting experience behind her. And I think over the course of 3 exhibitions, I've been able to see a real maturity and alteration in her work from one series to the next. Mika's coming around. She's shown you the photo collages, some smaller paintings, and now she's coming around to the sort of core of the gallery space where we have 5 large canvases of Julie's work on a much larger scale and really explosive use of color. So you're getting a nice look at what we're seeing in person. And for those of you who aren't able to get to Calgary, I hope you're getting a bit of a sense for the exhibition. We'll come back and visit some of these during the course of our conversation and give you a slower, closer look. But also, by all means, if you see a single piece you want a better look at, the Viviane Art store will have good resolution images of each of these. If you click on the work to get more information, it'll give you a nice image. Thank you, Mika. So feel free to do your own exploration after our conversation if you want a closer look at any of these pieces. I'm Viviane Mehr, and the gallery opened way back in 2013 now, we're just about 9 years old. And we're 2 years in this neighborhood in Inglewood, which is a really vibrant space and really particularly vibrant with these works, actually. So where do we want to start? Let's start by maybe talking a little bit about the photo collages, which is where we started with our tour today. Because those have been a part of your practice from pretty much the beginning, but your use of them and their presence in the space, that has changed. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your use of photography and in particular in this exhibition, the photo collages?
Yeah, so I've used them for a long time to get shapes and colors and ideas for my abstract paintings. I've started with photo sources of photos I take myself as I walk around in my everyday activities through Berlin. And then slowly over time, they've developed into their own parallel practice, just because the more you do something, eventually you just get better and better at them. And they became kind of a source of fascination and a I noticed how they were doing different things than the paintings. And I initially self-published a small book in 2018 of them, just low resolution, small JPEGs, and it got a lot of interest from other artists and people. And then that led to an application for a Canada Council grant to really develop this medium as a parallel practice. So with that grant, I got to up my skills and learn how to really get into Photoshop and learn how to make them into real high resolution images that I could print. And I also learned how to print them myself. So they really changed by scaling them up and using a camera to get the rich texture and detail. And they became a new thing with lots of surprises. Yeah.
And
how it came about.
What were the surprises?
The texture was a big thing. Suddenly the stucco and the kind of hyper realness of the streets and things you don't notice. And then also, when I first printed this one in particular, large, and there was this black fly resting on the wall in front, and it was something that I definitely didn't notice when I took the photograph. And so these small details of everyday life kind of popped into the frame. And I think that's something photography does, is it picks up on things that you don't necessarily notice yourself with your eyes as you walk through the city. So it's a way of bringing some humor into the work and some surprise and unexpected details. I think they use everyday, kind of very residential areas in Berlin, very everyday spaces. And I think what I'm really interested in is that friction between this kind of everyday banal spaces and these surprising moments of light or color that I capture and combine and kind of transform them into something else beyond the everyday.
Yes, and this one, first of all, I just want to tell you, it's probably one of my favorite compositions in the entire exhibition. But I'm also just so drawn to your use of color here and shadow.
Yes.
It's just a great example of that, the shadow. And I mean, I've not been to Berlin, but I somehow didn't imagine such bright colors on the architecture as what we're seeing in these. So maybe that's just my naivete because I've not been there, but I always had a darker, sort of grayer, browner image of Berlin.
There's definitely a lot of gray and brown, but I think I pick and choose what I want to see, I think, and combine it into my own world.
Mm-hmm. And so that piece combo that we just looked at is probably, of the photo collages, the most vibrant with color. And in turn, these paintings are probably, I would say, some of the most vibrant paintings I've seen you make. Can you talk a little bit about your use of color in these works?
What's new in them that's changed for the first time was making my own paint out of powdered pigment. And it's acrylic paint, but it really has a richness. And I got into this through my partner, Nam, who's been making his own oil paint for many years and deeply involved in it. And he's finally convinced me. And it was amazing when I started using it, because I've been using this translucent thin layers of acrylic. And with the tubed paint from the stores, you don't get this richness. You don't get this vibrant color when at the same time as translucency. So it was quite exciting. I got really into this intense color and found stranger colors that often aren't bought, or you can't buy them.
Yeah, I'll wander over to, let me look at these titles still evade me a bit. A shade sketch. I'm going to wander over there because that's a really good example of what you just said. And I've commented to you about this brown before, because
it's even an everyday color like dark brown, but then when I make it myself, it has a real almost purpley richness to it.
It really does.
Makes it really unusual, and it's quite watered down and in areas there, but it still has a fascination. I think also that dark red in that painting is quite unusual. It's this cadmium medium, and it's really dense and opaque and really rich. Yeah.
And it matches your blouse, but your blouse is not as rich
yes.
as this color is. This color is
Yeah,
got
maybe it's
almost
bright.
like
Yeah.
almost a burgundy hue. Gorgeous, gorgeous colors, very rich. So
Yeah.
you're mixing your own pigment, and you're in addition using a combination of opaque and translucent paint that
Yes.
really, alongside your use of white, brings the translucent paint, and the white in particular brings such light into your paintings. And again, and I remember you talking about this early on in our relationship, that you kind of missed the blue skies and sunshine of Alberta, and that you found yourself, when you were on your walks around Berlin and photographing spaces, you found yourself seeking the light. And we certainly see that light here.
Definitely. I started looking at my weather app and mapping out photo days on days where there's lots of sun, because the sharp shadows I find are the beginning of abstraction. These shadows that fall underneath the balconies and in the doorways of Berlin, and they start breaking up an everyday space into shapes. So it starts. It's the beginning of the transformation, I think, from the everyday normal world to something that has the possibility to get stranger.
Yes. The use of translucence and the way you are bringing coming to abstraction in your work. I know that you've had a couple of really strong influences in Helen Frankenthaler and Joan Mitchell in particular, but you also had mentioned another artist who has been an influence with your collage work on your canvases.
Yeah, I think we were talking before about Matisse, and I mean, there's a certain fluidity and lightness in Matisse that I think is very appealing. And but also in the late 1940s, he switched to making his paintings almost completely out of cutout paper due to illness, and that's where the title for the exhibition began, with this idea of cutouts is the term he invented, and the idea of daylight cutouts for me is this combination in the exhibition that I have of the strong light and shadow from the photo collages and this sense of abstraction in the painting.
Yes.
And with the strong color, I also try to get this sense of light in the paintings. That's how, like, the shadows, say in Shade Sketch, the brown painting we were looking at, is kind of this idea of a shady space in the summer, but it's a color that's invented. So it's a sense of light, but and with an invented sense of color. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
I'm going to wander back to Chosen Corners. Because I think it's I mean, there's a cut collage piece on every one of these paintings.
Right, that's what we haven't mentioned.
But this one, for me, is particularly magical. The cut piece almost starts looking like stairs to me, coming down the middle of the composition. I'm going to come in a little closer so people can get a sense for that cut edge.
Yes. So each painting is made out of 2 large-scale paintings, and the collage that I begin with in the photographs, this kind of method of cutting and pasting and collecting, continues and reassembling. It's a kind of a through line through my practice, and I have this fascination for a long time with combining 2 paintings and hiding part of it, and what that recombination results in. And also the cut line becomes a different type of edge than the painted line.
Yes, very much so.
The painted line is quite soft and fluid, and the cut line becomes sharp and creates a different kind of space. It cuts in like a window, or it pops out. On the smaller ones, you can really see the pile up of edges. Sometimes a small painting will happen from a cut up medium painting that already has a collage piece. So they often get multiple layers of collage pieces on top of them. So this one has,
some of these have quite a bit of thickness.
Yes, so that comes, the small ones are more intuitive, and they happen kind of more spontaneously with bits and pieces in my studio.
This one I see there's a shape there, here, and then this on top.
This one has quite a
number.
Quite a few.
So the cut collage, I mean, I guess it started with the photography and in a digital process, but it's made its way into the paintings with a manual process of you actually cutting and mining your own work and then using it to alter the composition of another painting. And I know when we've talked before, I've commented on how interesting it is to me that, you know, Calgary is kind of known for its hard edge abstraction. We have a number of local artists who have, you know, gained national acclaim, who use, you know, tape, vinyl, whatever, to get that hard edge, and the edge is actually a painted edge. And you're managing to accomplish that by slicing the work, which I think is really quite interesting and almost irreverent in a way.
Yes, there is something kind of irreverent. Like I'm
you
breaking
rebel.
some rules.
You're breaking the rules. It's great.
Not paintings and and I think that kind of sensibility comes into the photographs too, because it's not. I come to photography as an abstract painter, so I don't have any of these rules and standards of fine art photography. So I'm happy to just use kind of the lasso tool on Photoshop and cut and paste really simply and really directly. And I think it lets me come at it from kind of sideways.
Yes.
But in terms of the hard edges you were speaking about in Alberta, I think taping an edge or using vinyl, or it gives a really different sensibility. It talks about maybe machines or the digital or something very clean and has a different kind of energy, maybe slower or more, just different. And I'm interested in the fastness of the gesture and the fluid gesture, and also the organicness of cutting a line with scissors. It wobbles, it changes, it's all done by hand. And I think there's a sense of handmade and touch throughout all the work.
And these are the small canvases as well as the large ones done on the floor or on a flat surface?
Yeah, I mean, the small paintings, I often have a bunch of them all at once. So I can really try different pieces, and I make them kind of in a batch, maybe at the end of making a bunch of big paintings or something. But, big paintings, I usually just have one or two on the go at once. And
while they have a pristine finish look to them, especially in video or photograph, in person, there are pencil marks and imperfections that maybe we don't see until we see these canvases in person. Can you talk about how that's part of your practice?
Yeah, I mean, the pencil lines begin right at the beginning. The first thing I do I make these plans that I end up not using, but I start somewhere with the pencil sketch of the original collage or my drawing from that collage. And so that pencil line speaks to my visual thinking. And I like leaving the trace of it to suggest a diagram or like a blueprint or some sort of fictional space on this white ground. And then sometimes, you can see accidents, or even that one right there has a double cut line. So even the cut line itself can be rethought or changed, and it becomes a form of negative drawing almost in the painting. So what seems like an accident, I work with. So there's always this back and forth flow between choices, between what happens and as I'm making and what I decide to keep and what I decide to change.
And because they're painted flat on the floor, we also get these lovely drips off the side of your canvases, which I'm kind of a fan of, kind of a sucker for that. Just because it's fun to see. It's I don't know if this is I don't know if this is more an artist thing or if other people and collectors do it too, but I'm always really intrigued by the process of how work is made. And I think something quite satisfying about your paintings is that you leave so many clues and so much evidence of how things are made, without trying to erase those things. Does that take a little
really
self-restraint?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm so interested in my process is so processy, like making collages and drawings and then cutting things up, and I think that's where a lot of the juice is for me. This process of transformation of how I get shapes and end up somewhere, and so all the traces along the way are part of the work for me and are
Yes.
important.
Yes.
I think if it was totally sealed and finished and clean, it wouldn't be a living painting for me. It wouldn't have that energy.
Right. And these do have a lot of energy, and I think in interesting scale as well in these large works. Yeah. They're Julie size, right? Like they're like the same height as you.
A couple centimeters taller. I'm not very tall, so it doesn't take much. But but yeah, they're a good size that I can lift them myself in the canvas in my studio and lay them flat. But also they have a real relationship to the body, not just my body, but the viewer's body as you walk up to it. But with these large gestures that I make with these big, large brushes, that big one, in one shot, and I think there is a connection to my arm and my body and the physical moving.
And in many of these pieces, and Chosen Corners is that one at the back on the back wall, and that yellow patch along the side, that would have been a real physical stroke for you to make from top to bottom without interruption.
Yeah, but that one's sneaky actually, because it was originally a kind of a pinky brown, and to finish that painting, I cheated. I make rules and then I break them. But so I painted that gesture twice, and I changed it to yellow, and then the painting worked. So sometimes
it really works with the yellow.
Yeah. So sometimes there's always room to break rules.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing we love about art and creativity and being an artist, it's that perhaps we can be rule breakers in a way, right? Yeah, and look at things and challenge people to look at things differently. So it was lovely having you back in Calgary again, and now just over 2 years out of our first lockdown from COVID. This was one of your first returns home. It's kind of exciting for me that this is your hometown, but home for you now is probably more Berlin than Calgary.
It's always a hard question. I think I don't know if it's ever with the language and the different culture. I don't know. It's hard to say it's home. Parts of it feel like home. But yeah, always an open question where home is now. I think I've lived in so many cities in Canada and abroad that it's maybe home is something you just carry around with yourself wherever you end up.
Yes, but these paintings, it seems to me that you have successfully found a way in your explorations of light to always bring your Alberta roots into the presence of your art, which I find quite satisfying.
Yeah, maybe. I think the landscape you grew up in has an inevitable imprint on you somehow.
It does.
So I think when I do return to Calgary, I do. It's a synchronicity. You feel the light and the plants and the weather just is familiar and feels like home. Yeah.
So we have daylight cutouts on show now until June the 12th, and we're hoping that more people get the chance to come in and see it. And it's gorgeous in Calgary now. It's a beautiful spring day, and it's beautiful and spring-like in the gallery because of this light and these colors that you've brought us on these canvases. So thank you for that. What's in the works next?
I'm back in the studio and taking new photos right now. So now that the weather's gotten good in Berlin, And yeah, out on the streets, the leaves are all out here, and it's good weather for more research.
Good. And we've had really, really good response to the photograph collage prints. And like we mentioned at the start of our conversation, it's the first time we're showing them as part of the exhibition. And viewers are really enjoying them. Are there more of those? Do you think this will continue to be a part of your practices to include finished prints in your work, in your presentations of work?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've really developed in two different directions now. I still use some as ideas for paintings, but then I start seeing ideas that will only make sense as a print, especially ones with more texture or more detail, things that I wouldn't want to paint, these kind of intricate fences or small details and patterns and stuff. Different things. It's exciting to have two mediums and to be able to explore different things with them.
I'm excited to see what would happen if some of these were even larger. You know, in the same way that you've experimented with scale on your canvases, it might be interesting with some of your compositions, expensive, but to print them in a larger scale as well, because certainly for me as someone living with your canvases here in the gallery, I can enter into your compositions in a very different physical way in these large scale paintings than on the more intimate scale, the smaller pieces. So maybe that too. You might need another grant for that one. I don't know.
Yeah, I might need another grant.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Julie, is there anything else that you would like to touch on in relation to this exhibition?
Maybe one thing that came up was the texture in the painting, in the painting called Daylight Cutouts. And you were talking a bit before about the relationship of the painting texture with the bricks in the photograph.
Yes. I'll come back to that.
These textures do different things, but kind of pop up and do something really flat. So this strange pink texture that just the paint breaks down and does really strange things. And then in the other photo, this green bricks create another kind of interruption of space by being so much larger. And I had a friend in my studio, and he mentioned that he sees something similar in it to like a Cubist Picasso collage of a piece of newspaper glued right onto the front of a painting. And I think in some ways that this texture does that same thing. It creates an interruption of the real world and of a kind of hints at these past traditions of collage in art history.
Yes, daylight cutouts. I can't get it straight, sorry. There. The namesake of the exhibition. Awesome. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming to Calgary, stretching these canvases in the gallery as you do, and being part of our opening event and bringing so many Julie lovers into the gallery, and for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, I look forward to the next time. And maybe one of these days I'll get to Berlin. I don't know. I probably should. Anyway, thank you, Julie. We're going to sign off. Thank you to everyone who joined us for our conversation today. And by all means, if you watch this and it sparks questions or interest, take a look at the website, take a look at the Viviane Art Store if you want detailed shots of images of work. And we're happy to get answers to any questions you might have. So enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my day.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Thanks, Julie. Bye.
Bye.